Hello and welcome to the 99 Yards Draft Talk podcast, your home for all NFL draft related content. I'm Owain, and as you can see if you're watching on YouTube, I'm joined by Stu. We're doing things a little bit different this week. We've got 3 topics that we're going to discuss throughout the show based upon storylines that have emerged throughout this college football season. We'll take it one at a time, go a little bit more in depth and explore our thoughts a little bit more than we usually do. First of all, Stu, thanks for joining me. What's going on?
What's going on? Lots is going on. I'm in the middle of a bit of house renovations and whatnot, but life's just generally pretty busy. But there's always time to talk draft. Good to be chatting with you again, and obviously a big congratulations to our host who is enjoying his newborn baby. So, Brian, I hope you're listening and we don't take over your job for too long.
Yeah, been lumped with it here. Hopefully, Brian, you'll be back with us for too long. But yeah, congratulations to all of you. Should we get stuck straight into it then, Stu, with our first topic?
Yeah, let's fire on.
Is the contest for quarterback 1 between Caleb Williams and Drake Maye closer than we might think? That's the question. Caleb Williams, the quarterback from USC, has been lauded as one of the best quarterback prospects for a generation, but is North Carolina's Drake Maye closer to him in draft value than we maybe first thought? The reason for this discussion is that there's been a lot of talk recently, especially after Caleb Williams had a pretty bad performance against Notre Dame where he threw 3 interceptions, on whether he's potentially going a little bit overrated. And that has led to some discussion as to whether Drake Maye from UNC, as maybe who hasn't put a foot wrong so far in 2023, is maybe ahead of him as quarterback 1. Stu, kick us off. What are your opening thoughts here?
For all of you who listened to our last podcast when we did the mock draft, and if you haven't, go and have a listen to it now, and shame on you. I picked Drake Maye as a first overall pick in that draft. I think that the competition is closer than people may wish to admit at times. For me, and this, please, if you listen, don't take this the wrong way. I think whoever is going to draft Caleb Williams might be disappointed, and that's not. And I'll tell you why I think that. Caleb Williams has been talked about as the next coming of Patrick Mahomes. You've seen the comparisons by a lot of people, for the stylistic value he has, the way he plays the game. Patrick Mahomes, for me, is so far ahead of nearly every NFL quarterback that there is. For Caleb Williams to be as good as Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to be an awful lot better than an awful lot of very, very good quarterbacks. The likes of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, all these guys, you could go on and on about quarterbacks who are really very good, but for him to be touching the level of Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to be extremely special, and people that special are extremely rare. That's not to say that he couldn't get there, but if you're expecting that, and that's what your only option is going to be when you draft him, if he's Patrick Mahomes and nothing for you, I think that you might be setting yourself up for disappointment. Williams has had his ups and downs recently. He's had his naysayers as well, with a lot of chat you'll see about he has come up short against the better teams at times. That's not all on Caleb Williams. As we know, we can have great college quarterbacks who aren't in the best teams. So we can't lay the whole thing on his door. Drake Maye has continued to have a steady and clear progress this year. He's improved a lot of the things we wanted to see him improved. So I think that whilst there was a gap, it's narrowed and its potential to narrow further.
Yeah, so I think you see things fairly similar to me in the way that you spoke there, that this conversation is happening more because of the narrative around Caleb Williams than it is the narrative around Drake Maye. I say that this debate is being caused because of the discord around Caleb Williams, and I think that's what I wanted to touch on on mostly as well, because, well, let's start by saying that both of these quarterbacks are really, really good prospects, right? And this isn't, we're not knocking either of them here, whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake Maye. We're just trying to find and give some type of context around the debate. But to start with, a lot of this talk around Caleb Williams comes from, I think, polarization on social media and in sports media, which naturally happens these days. Some people on socials are going to say he's the greatest quarterback, college quarterback of all time. Others are going to say he's destined for a bust. That's just the nature of it. The reality is neither of them are true. Caleb Williams is an excellent prospect, the best we've seen probably in some time, but he's by no means and no faults, can't miss, perfect prospect, because that just doesn't happen. If it did, the NFL draft wouldn't be what it is, and it'd be a lot less entertaining, and we wouldn't be sat here doing this if it was that easy. Then you get the discord around him even amplified even more because of that expectation and the standards that Caleb Williams is being held to, which are completely unrealistic. When you see some analysts attaching generational prospect labels to him, then naturally Caleb Williams is going to be held to a completely different standard to the rest of the quarterbacks in this class. And then for him to be seen as that generational prospect for multiple years now, and to expect him to have maintained that level of standard and level of hype throughout his college career, it just isn't going to happen. And it's extremely wrong for us to have expected or even demanded how that to have happened.
Absolutely. And I think that what we sometimes forget as well is these are young guys who are finding their way through life in general. If you think back, much longer for me than it was for you, but when you're 20, 21, there's so much happening in your life, so much different things going on as well. It's not just football. And these guys are growing as people, as adults. They have to, yes, they're at college, they're having to do college work as well. And sometimes people just have off days. I mean, Caleb Williams has been, you're right, you talk a lot about the social media. You'll put someone have 6 throws of Caleb Williams, go, this is the best quarterback we've ever seen, and then the next week, oh, he's trash. He's had 3 interceptions. I'm sure there's been games, if you look through history, the likes of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all these guys have had 3 interception games. It doesn't mean that they're dreadful. And I think that there's so much swing and variance goes around draft circle, maybe not so much with the teams. I think they are able to drown out a lot of that chatter. But in draft circles, people just go wild on their hyperbole, and I think that can be really difficult for people to get their head around too.
Yeah, and the expectation that has been put on him, that only happens because of how good of a prospect Caleb Williams is, right? That he has the potential to be a different level of player when he gets to the NFL. So we naturally hold him to a higher standard than we do for those who are going to be a lower level pick. And that only happens because we think that he has the potential to be in the same kind of vein as a Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow when they were coming out, because he has the talent to be that what we expect of him is just completely different to what we expect of Drake Maye. The level of coming into the season, the level of standard, level of hype that we put on, and the expectations, you can't compare the two, because Caleb Williams was already the Heisman Trophy winner and was expected to repeat the exact same success that he had.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, and we talk about levels of being good. I mean, if we watch on an NFL on a Sunday, and this is not to say that this is who the prospects I'm comparing them to, not at all, but pick a quarterback who Daniel Jones having a really good game is not the same as Patrick Mahomes having a really good game.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you're talking about. The standards that they set are, and the expectation levels for people are different. And I think that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to back up the thought that we think that Caleb Williams is good without saying that Drake Maye isn't, because I think that Drake Maye has made up ground this year, and there will be teams who have that. There'll be teams who will have a wide gap still, I think, but there will be teams who will have different thresholds, different metrics, different things that they look at. These guys haven't gone through any interview processing yet, who will at some point potentially have Drake Maye higher on the board.
Yeah. And it comes down to narrative as well, right? That there's naturally momentum and narrative swings throughout the draft cycle, and we're just going through the last couple of weeks a part where the narrative has been written on Caleb Williams that he hasn't shown it lately, and that's where the narrative changes. The momentum can so easily swing by him just having an amazing couple of games, and that narrative and momentum will just flip. And what we've seen in 2023 is that the concerns that we maybe had in the summer, that have been able to play in structure, and the question marks we had around pressure, all that's happened is they've been amplified a little bit in 2023. We always knew that Caleb Williams, that you have to take the good and the bad, and that is where the expectations come in, where if you're just watching the highlights reel, then absolutely fantastic. But the type of player he is, if you want to have those highlight reel type plays where he takes a risk and it comes off, you also have to acknowledge that sometimes that's going to go wrong. It's not going to come off every single time, and you can't overreact, as you were saying, due to just a couple of bad games. But what we've seen is maybe a reoccurring theme from Williams this season, where the struggles have kept on happening from game to game, and they're being amplified. You just take the in structure plays, for instance, he can too quickly look to move out of the pocket this season, and that's the type of player he is, because that's where he succeeds. But it's also meant that he's held the ball for far too long. So far in 2023, his average time before throwing is just over 3 seconds. That just isn't going to fly in the NFL.
It's just going to get him killed.
The number needs to drop considerably before we can talk about that type of style of play translating to the NFL. Then you add in what he's been doing in the short game, and how you play the short areas is such a big part of NFL game plans these days, where just simply reading and distributing the football is a huge part of playbooks, and you simply just have to be able to do it before you can have those off-platform plays. You can't make a living from these highlight reel plays. Being able to do them is a luxury. That to have those outstanding creative plays that Caleb Williams has, you first have to do the fundamentals right, and you have to be able to work within structure, and you have to be able to control the game, and then you can unleash the kind of the Superman and the superpowers that he has. For me, he isn't reading the middle of the field correctly, and that's something that's carried over from the summer, where sometimes he just completely ignores over the middle altogether, and you can't be successful in the NFL going off script every play. You have to be able to do what your coach says and what the play caller is asking you to do. You can't just go off platform constantly. When he does, it's brilliant, but he hasn't shown so far in 2023 that he is doing it consistently. Do I think he can do it? Absolutely, but that doesn't mean it should be ignored completely. And then the second thing, sorry, Stu, I'll let you come in, is the play when pressured is a massive thing at the moment. Our friend Trevor Sycamore, who we've had on the pod before from PFF, shared that Caleb Williams in 2022 was the top-ranked college football quarterback when pressured. This season, 2023, he's number 175, which is the 5th worst in college football. You can come up with all the excuses that you want, where he's playing in a team that's void of talent, or he's a system, or whatever. And USC's been hyped because of him, not the talent around him. But he has to take his equal share of responsibility, and that's where the standard comes in, right? That Williams was never going to play to that same standard that we saw of him when he won the Heisman Trophy last year. He wasn't going to be the top performing quarterback in all these metrics again. It was just always extremely unlikely. You just hoped that he'd answered some of the questions that we maybe had. Finally, for me, before I go over, because this is the last thing that I wanted to mention on this, is that Caleb Williams is my top rated quarterback. I think he's unbelievable, and no one is as big a fan of Caleb Williams than I've been. But I just think we have to be honest about him not being perfect. He's great. He's maybe elite, but he isn't perfect. No one is. As you said before, Stu, you just have to let these kids work it out, and it's about having a fair debate around them.
Yeah, the point that you touched on about questions that we had in the summer, I think they're still the same questions. I don't think that. Yeah. I don't think that he's answered the questions that we had of Caleb Williams, but I don't think that he has regressed so far in the things that he's very, very good at either.
Yeah.
I think that it's so difficult to build on such a good season that he had and winning the Heisman to have an even better season the next year. So having the same questions I don't think is necessarily a negative thing either. It's just that there's maybe there is things as well. I think when you're such a hyped quarterback, when you're a Heisman winner, some players feel that they have to put the team on the back all the time. And that, okay, we're in this difficult situation, right, I'm going to scramble out and launch a 50-yarder down the field, but actually a little screen pass to that or a check down to your running back is going to be perfectly fine in this situation. Take your 3-4 yards and then just move on from there. And I think that's maybe what he's struggling to find that balance about, I've got to put this team on my back with, actually I've just got to play good, effective football.
Yeah, balance is completely right there. That's the word, because I guess that's what I was getting at. That we didn't need to see more of these high right little plays. We knew what he could do. What we wanted to see was him being able to work the game a little bit better, stay in structure, control the play, go through his reads, and having the balance between that and out of structure, which has maybe swayed a little bit too much to out of structure. That we just wanted, what we wanted to see was in how he did it inside structure, and we just haven't seen it yet. We've still got time, we still might. We've spoke a lot about Caleb Williams. I suppose we should also speak about Drake Maye. He hasn't really put a foot wrong this season, has he?
I think that's where we need to start at. Drake Maye has just shown that he can be an effective quarterback, and I think that was something that we wanted him to be seen as. We knew he had all the talent, he had the size, he's got the speed, he's got the arm strength, he looks like a prototypical quarterback, he's intelligent, but it's, can he put that all together and be consistent, make less mistakes, have better decision making? And I think he has shown that he's improved in all those areas as the college season has gone on. There's still a lot of games to go, and there's potential that he could have his Caleb Williams moment where he has his games where he doesn't look as good. But I think it's the progression that I think of of Drake Maye, rather than the regression of Caleb Williams, that has brought these two closer together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we're saying is the way the season's panned out, Drake Maye is a lot closer to Caleb Williams than maybe we thought or expected to in pre-season. We are only in October, about to go into November. There's a chance that this circles all the way back round and a gap opens again, because that's naturally how draft cycles work. That it's a cycle, and we'll go through everything, and who knows. But right now, if you have Drake Maye as the quarterback one in the 2024 NFL draft class, then I don't think either of us are going to argue with you, because there's certainly an argument to be made. It isn't personally what I think, but I can absolutely understand why someone would put Drake Maye ahead. And I think it would be the same for NFL teams, right? And this is where situation matters so much, because for a prospect entering the NFL, as to whether they succeed or not, it all comes down to the right situation and the right circumstance. And that goes to both Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, where they both have the ability to be outstanding pros. But if Maye finds himself in the better situation or the right situation, and Caleb Williams doesn't, then he's going to have more success in the NFL. That's just how it will be. We've seen that throughout the NFL and throughout history.
We've just seen that in the last draft, haven't we? The first few games, CJ Stroud is in a better situation than Bryce Young is at the moment. We're not comparing those as players, but quarterback one, quarterback two last year. CJ Stroud seems to have had the better start because he's been put in that better situation.
Yeah, and this is where the discussion is always evolving, right? We'll still argue. There's still some time left in the season. We'll let that play out, and then say the conversation could well change again depending on where these guys get drafted, which is the main thing. So yeah, currently there's I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but just as we've shown there, I think there's a way of having a decent conversation about it, and they're definitely closer than we think.
Yeah, I would agree. And at the moment, unless there's a major happening, they are going to be the quarterback 1 and 2 that most people have. I can't see that there's going to be anybody gets in that 1 and 2 group. There's an interesting conversation to be had about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 later on. But we'll leave that for another day, because we could be on a very, very long podcast if we start going down that route.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add there?
I think we've talked longer than we planned to about these two guys, if I'm honest. But quarterbacks, we could talk all day, but we've got plenty to get through. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. It's just such an interesting discussion between these two. And I suppose before we move on, we'd love to know, our audience, what you think. Who is your quarterback one right now? Do you think Drake Maye is closer to Caleb Williams than expected, or do you maybe agree or disagree with the points that we made? Head over to YouTube if you're not there already. Leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. But let's move on to our next topic. Marvin Harrison is the top receiver in this class, and if you wanted to call him the top overall prospect in the entire draft class, you won't get any arguments from us. But this wide receiver class looks really good again in 2024. So we're going to take a look at who are the next best receivers after Marvin Harrison Jr. in this class. Just as I said there, Stu, there's a host of names that could end up going in the first round. And it might be best to go through some of them before we agree on who maybe is the next best receiver or wide receiver 2. So there's plenty of names there. I'll let you start with whoever you like.
Let's start. Why don't we stick at Ohio State? Because he's got a teammate there, Igbuka, who is another great prospect from Ohio State. They seem to churn out wide receivers at a rake or not. He is someone who I think might get a little bit lost in the shuffle because he is a teammate of someone who's such a good prospect, but don't let that fool you.
He is.
Yeah.
Considering where we started, the conversation's definitely dropped off with him.
I mean, he is somebody who I think will have a lot of success at the next level because I think he's a really clever route runner. I think he finds the soft spaces very nicely. He's someone who will become a quarterback's friend quite easily. We've seen these kind of guys who maybe aren't the most explosive, maybe aren't the biggest, maybe aren't the fastest, but he's plenty of those, but he's not going to be the top in those metrics, who are just that little bit more savvy, understand space, understand leverage, understand how to run an effective route and have good safe hands. And that makes me sound like I'm making him out to be a really boring prospect, but he's absolutely not. He just does all the little things, the simple things that maybe other players don't do because they are just quicker or stronger or faster than everyone else. He maybe has to think about things a little more, but I think he's a really interesting prospect. I think that he will be a first-round pick for someone. I think that he will be a really nice complement to any receiving group that he joins.
Does the way his draft cycle has gone so far, bear in mind he has missed a fair few games so far this season, does it remind you a lot of what we went through with Jackson Smith-Njigba last year?
Yes, I think it does. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba was a little bit forgotten, although I still came round to him as being my wide receiver one. I think that there is a comparison to be had there, and we sometimes do see that about people who, out of sight, out of mind. What have you done for me lately? I think that there's maybe a little bit less of that now. We've seen with the COVID year where people missed a whole year, and we saw how good they have been, that maybe people don't hold so much stock by that anymore. But if they've injuries, again, it is a different situation though, isn't it? But Smith-Njigba was somebody who people just forgot about because he had that great year the year before. Didn't do much, and now a few games into his Seahawks career, he's looking like a really good prospect.
Yeah, you think back to this time last year, there was reports where teams had a third-round grade on him and he was being left out of mock drafts constantly.
Not by me.
I think the same thing is kind of happening to Emeka Egbuka here, where I think people will end up circling back around to him because he's an elite option out of the slot, absolute technician, ultra productive.
That's a good phrase. He's a technician, player. Absolutely.
He's refined. He's solid. He might not have the highest ceiling of these guys, but he's going to be a very good player, and he should be a first-round player as well. I think I would go to Malik Neighbors next, the receiver from LSU, who is having a really solid year, to be honest. He was my wide receiver 2 entering the season. Whether he is or not now is another question, but he is a player who has an extremely, extremely high ceiling. When he gets the ball in his hands, he just toys with defenders at times. He catches everything. It's such a natural receiver. He is only 6 foot, but he has a really good strength profile from that. Really physical, plays tougher than you would expect for his frame. Skill moves insane. Got that really good body control and is able to create separation through a number of different methods. Just a very active player, which is what I like. He's going to always be around the ball, and you can get the ball to him in various different ways. So he's someone who I think will go in the first round and definitely has a chance to be that second receiver taken.
Yeah, he's a really he plays with a lot of physicality for someone of his size. I think he doesn't he doesn't mind that he's maybe not as big as some other guys. He's like, it doesn't seem to enter his thinking really. I think that he runs well with the ball in his hands, very well in fact. I think that he would be someone that you could have a short pass off to, and then he's going to break big. He's got that ability to do so. Once he gets up, I think he's not the quickest in that real short yards, but once he builds up that head of steam in the long speed, then once he's gone. I think that he is someone who, again, when you're looking at that mix, aren't you, of receivers in your team, if you don't have that type of player, he may well be one of the first guys that you go for. Again, we're talking about fits. You know, if some teams have that type of player, Malik Neighbours might not be the guy that they're looking for. They might be looking for some of the other skill sets we're going to talk about. But again, I think we're going to get a slew of guys going in the first round this year.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. I think you could make a case for 8, maybe 9. You can make a case for.
Yeah, I mean,
there won't be that many because there never is, but you can make a case for that many, especially some towards the back end. Who's your next guy?
My next guy is Rome Odunze, from Washington State. I think he is someone who Washington. Yeah, why am I saying Washington State? I'm going to get slaughtered by someone for that. He's just so used to saying state after everything, isn't he? I think that he is somebody who has the required height. He has the required speed. He has really nice body control for someone of his size as well. His route running is really quite good for someone that big as well. Again, he's someone who's able to find just that soft spot where he doesn't always have to be contesting the catches. His ability to beat man coverage as well. He's just got all the physical attributes that you would like. I think he has the ability to play outside very easily given the size, but he has the skills that he could play as a big slot at times as well. He's had a really good connection with Michael Penix. I think that he has been his go-to guy. He has all the kind of tools. I think that I would see him as a really good wide receiver too, to complement. And that's not a disparaging to anybody. We see plenty of wide receiver twos go in the first round. But if you have someone who is your one guy, he's going to be a really lovely complement to somebody. And I think that he has all the skills that, again, round one is well within his grasp.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's building on what you said there in terms of his scouting report. I think he's going to be more athletic than people think as well. I think he will test better than we maybe expect. I find him a very savvy player. Savvy route running. Is able to dip his shoulder, avoid contact, especially when attacking over the middle. Sharp cuts, explosive movement skills, and what I keep coming down to and what we keep saying about him is body control. The way that he's able to manipulate
his feet along the sidelines. You know, there was one play, I think it was against Oregon, where he almost was like tiptoeing down that sideline, and for a guy that size to control his body when around people was really impressive.
Yeah, it's size speed combo with a player who's got really good flexibility and body control. I really like him. I think he will actually go higher than we think. We're probably thinking of him a guy who could go back end of the first round. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go in the teens at all. The guy who I'm kind of leaning on towards this next best of the rest is Keon Coleman from Florida State, who I was on as my wide receiver 4 coming into the year, but has far exceeded the expectations that I think I even had of him. Transferred from Michigan State to Florida State and has been absolutely unbelievable. His report has all the size measurables, the ability to bail out a quarterback, because you see it with Jordan Travis, who we'll talk about at some point. But if a ball's overthrown, if a ball is underthrown, he's got a way of just finding the ball. There's not many receivers in college football who can do the things and bail out quarterbacks. The ball doesn't have to be perfect. He will find a way of getting to it, can pluck the ball out from absolutely anywhere. Awareness, ball tracking, absolutely fantastic. Create separation with physicality. The separation is always what I look for in receivers. Doesn't matter how you do it. Can you create separation? And the amount of separation you create is vitally important when evaluating receivers. Fluid, smooth, excellent blocker as well, which is always a nice plus when you're a receiver. I don't think there's many weaknesses to his game. He might not have the top end speed, but he's looking like an early first round pick at the moment.
He's an absolute beast. He would be an absolute nightmare for corners to defend against. And you're going to have to put your biggest, most physical corner up against Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
A 5'9", 5'10" corner is just not going to cut it. And then if you put in your biggest corner against him, either your quickest, because he'll just burn you for speed as well. The thing I like about him is his ability to adjust whilst in the air. He has this ability to be almost looking like he's going one way, and he can flip his body and can make a catch completely in the opposite direction mid-air, which the timing of that as well is really impressive. He can get good air time, and he's up above the rim, as they say. You can tell that he's played basketball before. He's got that that kind of ability to him. I think that he has gone up and up and up in everyone's wide receiver rankings as the season's going on. Yeah, again, it's just about polishing and being a bit more refined. I think he's got all the attributes, even just a bit of time and development in some of these facets. I think he's going to be a really good prospect as well. I think he will test well as well. He's going to be someone that the guys are going to watch out for. And if he tests well at that size metrics, look for him going even higher than we think.
Yeah. They're probably the guys who are challenging for that next best receiver after Marvin Harrison. But there's probably some other guys that's worth just mentioning at this point who could potentially go in the first round that we can just touch on briefly. There's a pair of Texas receivers, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy, both very different players, but both equally as worthy of probably back end of the first round discussion at the moment.
A.D. Mitchell's just a touchdown machine. You see, if you're watching college football on a Saturday and you get a glimpse of Texas playing, it's just A.D. Mitchell winning the ball and scoring touchdowns. And at the end of the day, that's what the game's about. You've got to score points, and Mitchell's one of the best at that. I can't remember how many touchdowns he's got, but he seems to be scoring touchdowns every single week. He's another one of these big guys. I can't remember. I've not noted down his height from there, but you probably got it there. Right? He looks every inch of that 6'4" as well. In contrast to his teammate, who is they're almost like a little enlarged duo. But I think that's maybe again a bit disparaging to his teammate there. But for me, I really like A.D. Mitchell. I know that there's a lot of people high on him as well. If you want Keon Coleman, but you're drafting a little bit later, A.D. Mitchell's not a bad compromise, is he?
And he's got speed to burn as well. He's a very, very lanky, so he is under 200 pounds listed at the moment. So you might want some of that bulk, but that's where you get kind of these sporadic or explosive plays where in my notes originally had like him to play with more control, but then I kind of watching him again and watching him play, I kind of that kind of makes him what he is, right? That he's
unpredictable.
In a bottle. Exactly. Great anticipation, avoids tackles, shifty. I can see someone taking a punt on him. And then Xavier Worthy has got this reputation of being a small receiver.
He's actually looked him up. He's actually 6'1". He just doesn't look it.
His problem is he's thin.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the makes the difference, isn't it? He's skinny.
Yeah, he's 160 pounds listed, which probably means he's slightly lighter than that. He's going to need a couple of trips to Pizza Hut before the combine. He maybe can get in touch with Bryce Young.
Yeah,
see
the Bryce Young
see
diet.
to check out in Indianapolis. But yeah, it's the first percentile. It's just no. But he's super quick. We've mentioned on the pod before, but just he ran the 100 meters in 10.55, so he's absolutely electric. Scary elusiveness, just truly dynamic. We're all about building a room. If you're a team that has a bigger receiver and you need some speed, then Xavier Worthy's your guy. You think, trying to think of the right team, but maybe someone like, he's not going to go this way, but maybe like the Titans, who we've got DeAndre Hopkins at the moment. They've got Treylon Burks, but don't really have that true speed guy. He would fit in well there. You could
Chargers.
Yeah, there's plenty of them. Chargers is perfect, actually. That's a great point. I like that, because we were talking about last season. Zay Flowers would have been perfect for them.
Oh yeah, we
Quentin
were all
Johnston.
giving them that burner, and they've given Quentin Johnson, who's
Worthy.
sadly just not. Yeah.
That works perfectly. I was actually going to say that someone like the Eagles, but that would just be unfair.
We're not having that kind of chat.
Couple of outside receivers that I think just are worth just touching their names on. We're both massive fans of Troy Franklin, but he's not going to be in this wide receiver two discussion, but definitely is worthy of round one contention. Xavier Legette has come on leaps and bounds this year. He's very much gaining traction. Roman Wilson from Michigan is as well, got a really good connection with JJ McCarthy. And one name to watch out for, because he's only just become eligible and might have a say in what happens with Drake May, is Tez Walker from North Carolina, who's only been eligible for the last 2 games after, I mean, who knows how to explain the eligibility rules if he wasn't eligible, but it's absolutely
it confused
madness.
me.
Yeah, madness. But he has looked fantastic. Drake May was performing really well without him. Now he's got a true wide receiver one. That was really going to help him as well. So there's just some names who you are going to see climb and be talked about throughout. But really, we're looking at those top names that we spoke about for wide receiver 2.
Have you settled on who your 2 is then?
Well,
at this point,
for me, at this point, it would be Keon Coleman for me. At this very moment, if he continues doing what he does, I can't see that changing. But yeah, Keon Coleman for me right now.
Yeah, I'm a big Odunze guy, so I want to see how he continues the rest of the season. But who knows? We've got a couple of months to go yet.
Exactly. Well, there we are then. That's who we think could be wide receiver 2 in the 2024 NFL draft class. And again, let us know what you think. Who is your wide receiver 2 currently? We'd love for you to let us know. Down in the comments on YouTube is the best place for it. Is there someone that we've maybe missed, that we've spoken about a lot of names there, but is there someone maybe that we've overrated, maybe underrated as a prospect? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, join the discussion, let us know. Let's move on to the next topic. A class that both myself and Stu are high on is this offensive tackle class. It has multiple guys who are first round players, and we even had 4 go in the top 10 of our latest mock draft. But how good really is it? We'll take a look at some of the names, discuss how good they are. Maybe they're better, on par, maybe worse than classes that we've seen previously over the last couple of years. But how good is it compared to classes that we've evaluated previously? Stu, you are our resident offensive tackle expert. I know it's your favorite position to talk about, so I'm going to lean on you heavily for this one. I'm going to let you lead the discussion. I think the best thing to do here is maybe let's talk about some of the offensive tackles in this 2024 class, and then we'll compare it to some of the previous classes in a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, there's a lot of prospects that I think are going to be in that first round discussion. And let's start with Olu Fashanu. I think he is a guy I would have had as my tackle 1 last year in the draft cycle. Then he decided that he was going to go back to college. I think that it's not a bad move for him because he was still quite a young prospect. at the time, and he has done nothing to suggest that he has made a mistake in doing that. I think that tackles do take that little bit of time to develop at the NFL level. So why not have another year in college just to round things out? He's a guy. He's 6'6", about that 320-pound mark. So he's at the right kind of size that you want to have an offensive tackle. He's He's got the ideal height, weight, length. He's got a right frame as well. He's well proportioned. I think that he's not too top heavy as some of these bigger guys are. He's an athlete. He's a really good pass protector. I think that that's probably something that he's better at than in the run game for me. He's fluid mover. He's got hand strength. He knows what he's doing. He has got that really able to convert speed to power very quickly. He's explosive out of his stance. I really, really, really like Olu Fashanu. I think that for me at the moment, he's my offensive tackle 1. But there's a couple of guys that are snapping at his heels.
Yeah, absolutely. He's so good. The above size measurables, as you said. He's got a basketball background as well. If you want to Google highlights of Oliver Shanu playing basketball, looks ridiculous. Such an explosive player, explodes out of his stance. What can add to his report, which is the list of strengths on his scouting report is absolutely ridiculous. But his kick slides cover so much ground, and he plays with so much speed, both in terms of physically and mentally, because he's so intelligent that he's literally a step ahead on everyone and every snap. He's able to do that because of his physical ability, but he's just so intelligent that he's already worked things out. Such good balance, very good recovery as well. So when he does lose out, he's quick and he's snappy to figure out what he needs to do. Very coordinated. Well, you could talk forever about Olu Fashanu, but there's really not going to be many weaknesses on his report. I'm guessing the guy that is next up on your list would be Joe Alt.
Yeah, Joe Alt for me is next up. I think that he is just an all-round, very solid, very reliable player. He maybe isn't got the flashes of natural ability that you see in Fashanu, but I think he's someone who's a student of the game. He understands how to play the position very well. He just does everything right. I think that he comes across as somebody who would just be very professional, and has standards and set standards in an offensive line. I think that he has the potential to be one of these guys that you look back who has an exemplary 15-year career, in a franchise. They just keep playing him until he's too old and can't play anymore. As we see with some of these guys, I think it comes across as that kind of thing. As I say, he's maybe not as quick or maybe as flexible as Fashanu. His kick slide, you mentioned about the kick slide of Fashanu. Joel definitely doesn't have that. I don't think he's quite as flexible in the hips and things as well. But he has improved, I think, this year in that he plays that little bit lower. He's got a little bit more bend to his game. He's really just a determined player. You have to be at your best in every snap. He doesn't take snaps off. You've just got to be at your best to get around him. He's a big guy to get around, but he doesn't just rely on size. He's got good technique. He's got good hands. He's able to counter. He doesn't get flustered. If someone looks like they're going to beat him on a snap, he just resets himself, gets himself in the correct position and tries to counter it. And if he does get beat, which is rare, the next snap, he doesn't let it get to him. He just goes back to what he knows. He's got good, solid fundamentals. So he would definitely be next up for me.
Yeah, they are the clear two. Joel is wise beyond his years, really, isn't he? He's 6'8" as well, so he's absolutely a hulking tackle. They are the clear 1 and 2. There's a bunch of others. The conversation, I suppose, gets interesting after this as to how you want to rank them. We're not at the point of doing that yet, but J.C. Latham from Alabama is almost certainly going to be up there in that discussion, isn't he?
He is. I'm maybe just not quite as high on Latham as some. I do think that he's there or thereabouts in a lot of people's rankings. I do think that Latham at times relies upon being the big guy on an Alabama offensive line. He's got strength and power for days, but I'm not sure he always uses it to his advantage. He sometimes struggles with a bit of quickness at times as well. He's, I mean not his own quickness, I mean defending against quickness.
Yep.
When he's moving himself and getting into sets, he can be, quick enough to do that. But if someone if you've got a bendy, speedier edge rusher against him, he's sometimes difficult to get his feet set quick enough to deal with that. But I think he's got a lot of talent. You don't play on an Alabama offensive line without it. But for me, I think there's still a bit to go there yet for me to be 100% on the JC Latham train. But we see these guys from Alabama with power, size, and speed. They do get drafted early.
Yeah, and I think I'm with you. The reason why he's up in this discussion is because of his tools, right? And it's a position that you quite often see who's big, who's quick, who has the tools to make it, and they do get taken in the first round. And I think JC Latham will be one of them, but I think he has quite a way to go to be an kind of upper tier starter at the moment. I think he lacks a little bit of bend and flexibility. You mentioned playing against speed, that he just loses it against speed rushers, and it leads to him playing extremely panicked.
He's frantic. He becomes a bit frantic, and his handwork just then goes all out of control. And he tries to rely on, when they say use what he is in his power, and if they're gone, you can't get your hands on them. You haven't got that power.
Yeah, and that links to kind of two things which I have for him, which is I think he's very reactive, that he doesn't really play with much anticipation, which means that he isn't able to add those counters to his game. And that kind of comes from the fact that he plays with his head down far too often, that he needs to get his head up because it hinders his awareness, and it means he can lose out to rushers, especially when they're crossing his face. He's got a way to go, but I think he probably will be a first round player simply because of the tools that he possesses.
Teams want offensive tackles. Teams like offensive tackles. They're in an elite position, and when you've got a player who does have things that there's a lot to like, and a lot of teams will think we can mold this guy with a bit of coaching from an NFL offensive line coach, and so I think he does have the tools. I'm just not quite as sold as maybe some of the other guys we've got going around.
Yep, I think that's completely fair. A guy who's maybe testing our patience and testing our ability to evaluate at this point, Amarius Mims. It was a complete punt to talk about in preseason because he hadn't played very much, thinking he was going to be the starting right tackle for Georgia this season. Was injured. I believe he's had some surgery, right? And he's on the way back. Difficult evaluation at the moment, but where are you standing on him currently?
We talk about tools again. We come
exactly.
back to it, and I think that's what we have with Amarius Mims. He's difficult because he's not played a lot this year, and that's when you were looking for that tools to develop with Amarius Mims. We see a lot of these guys again who are offensive that teams do take a punt on because they have that raw ability. I think he's going to have to come back and have a really strong second half to the season and play really well to be a first rounder, unless somebody absolutely falls in love with him. But again, we come back to it. We've seen people who they like the tools, they like the big school prospects with tools, and that's what a Mims is for me at the moment.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of work to do, but that's not to say he can't get there.
Yeah, he is back in training. We'll see, I guess, when he actually gets back on the field. But one thing's for sure, then they're not going to play him if he isn't right, because they don't need to at Georgia. So we'll see how it works for him. He could be one that doesn't actually end up declaring. Where do you want to go to next?
My man,
Graham Barton.
No, not Graham Barton
No.
just yet. I've got two. Fuaga.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm still claiming him. Everyone likes Talise Fuaga now. He's a bit different to the other guys in that he is a bit more of that. I think I described what was the guy who ended up getting drafted by the Cowboys a couple of years ago? Tyler Smith. He's not the same, but I described him as a bull in a china shop at one point, and Fuaga is a bit like that. Although he is someone who's just got a real nasty demeanor, and he loves the run game. He loves smashing into people, but he has leverage and strength as well to anchor well in the pass protection game as well. He is somebody who is proactive. You mentioned about being reactive. Yeah. He's someone who's very proactive. He knows where to put his hands. He has counters to counters. He's really thick and powerful through that lower body. He uses his legs to drive people off the ball. But when he needs to be, he's got a little bit of the dancing feet as well when he needs to in pass protection. So he's not all about the power. He's got a little bit of finesse to him as well. He is somebody that I really like. He's come on leaps and bounds. He's rising up draft boards. He has played almost exclusively at right tackle, and is that going to count against him in some of these guys who've played at left tackle, which is seen as the
Darnell Wright.
It didn't, and we're going to come on to talking about him, I suspect, when we go into the looking at things. Darnell Wright went very highly, and he was very much a right tackle. So, and we've seen the value of right tackles increase recently. But yeah, Talise Fuaga is somebody that I really, really like as well. Graham Barton, you mentioned me how much I love Graham Barton. I think I'm going to count Graham Barton as an interior offensive lineman when it comes to it.
That's fair.
There's a couple of other names kicking about there as well. Jordan Morgan's a guy who a lot of people like. Patrick Paul, the guy from Houston, is a name that's mentioned. We've talked about him. We're not the highest on him. Ryan's shaking his head there. You're totally out. Yeah, I mean, we talked about him on our last podcast, didn't we? He's toolsy. So I think that's going to be the top guys, the ones with first round consideration. There might be another ones who sneak in back there, but I think that's probably a bunch at the moment.
Yeah, the two names I would add as sneaky ones to watch out for. Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma is garnering some attention, and Kingsley Suamatea from BYU is another toolsy guy that people like. We'll see what the evaluation comes in at the end of the season, but he could be one that could sneak it. But as we said, this is a pretty good class, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I know we're going to come on to comparing them to the draft classes of years gone by as well. So yeah, let's crack on and let's have a look at that. Just see where they do stack up.
Yeah, so the class is worthy of all the hype that we've just mentioned. So we'll move the conversation on to looking at these previous offensive tackle classes, and then we'll have a look and see where this overall class stacks up compared to them. So let's clarify. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of hindsight here. So let's try and think about what we thought of them as a prospect rather than their NFL careers, because obviously there are some players on this list that we thought very highly of, but for whatever reason, it hasn't quite worked out for them in the NFL. So in last year, 2023, the first rounders were Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright, Peter Skoronski, Broderick Jones, and Anton Harrison. What are we thinking? Higher or lower?
Yeah. For me, it's clearly higher. I think last year, the only two offensive tackle prospects I was really high on was Paris Johnson. Yep. I think he's been okay, and I think that certainly my top two would rank above him at the moment.
Yep.
Skoronski, I was always unsure about whether he was a tackle or a guard, but he kind of fits in there. The only other one that he wasn't even a first rounder that I really liked, which was Dwan Jones, and he was drafted way late. So I think I was off on where he was drafted, but his production has been really good actually playing for the Cleveland Browns. He's probably been one of the best. So I think that the top guys certainly would be better prospects for me. I wasn't a big Darnell Wright fan, if I'm all honest. I didn't have him in my top 5 tackles, so I was really surprised when the Bears took him. So I would certainly have Fuaga as a better right tackle than him at this stage. So probably I would be stacking up this one better than last year. Thinking about prospect-wise, again, we're hindsighting how well these guys are going to do, and who knows, Fashanu might be an absolute bust. You just don't know. But when we're looking purely at what we thought of them as prospects, certainly this year, the top guys are higher rated for me.
Yep. So higher on 2024 than 2023. What about 2022, which had Ikem Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Trevor Penning, and Tyler Smith, who win the first round?
That's a really difficult one because I think we all really thought, particularly that first 3 guys.
Yeah, the top 3, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about those 3 guys, and there was a lot of talk. I think they ended up going 5, 6, and 9.
9, yep.
If I think rightly, and we all had them in different orders as well, so it wasn't clear cut. I think ranking them as prospects is very difficult. Actually, I think that there's
close, isn't it?
That is a close class. Who was the one you said was the last one picked in that first round again?
Tyler Smith was the last one.
Tyler Smith, yeah, he's one. He's one.
Trevor Penning went as well to the Saints.
Yeah, I really like Tyler Smith. I was quite high on him, and again, yeah, that top it would be close. It would require a bit of a sort out if I'm not going to lie on that one and come down to the end of the season gradings and things. But
we're a bit on par.
They'll be on the same mix, I would think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you there. 2021, that had Penny Sewell, Rashawn Slater, Elijah Vera Tucker, depending on how you want to define him.
Yeah.
The enigma that is Alex Leatherwood and Christian Darrisaw.
This is difficult to do without hindsight because we've had some very good tackles from that group, haven't we? Mm-hmm. Slater's been excellent, and when he's been fit, Penny Sewell has been very, very good as well. AVT he's been really good since they moved him to right tackle.
Christian Darrisaw's been great at the Vikings.
Darrisaw's been great at the Vikings as well. Prospect-wise, I think that class probably the top 2. Well, certainly Sewell. We all love Penny Sewell.
Yep.
And Slater was right up there as well. So, yeah, I think we might had 2 from that class as the top 2, but the next couple might have been from this class. So, probably higher in 2021 at that very top end.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody in the grand loved Penny Sewell. He was going to be the great shining light from that class.
Is his stock kind of comparable to Fashanu at this point, or do you think we were higher on Sewell?
I think in general people were higher on Penny Sewell.
Yep.
I think everyone had heard and known about Penny Sewell for a long time, and he was this hyped. So I don't think Fashanu has quite the same hype behind him as Sewell did at this point in the draft cycle. I think if you were to say that Fashanu's the Penny Sewell of this year, I think that would be fair. But I think Sewell had a lot more hype around him than Fashanu did in general. But comparable certainly. But I do think that 2021 class probably edges it at the very top end.
Yeah. They're the classes that have been since we started evaluating together. I do want to throw the 2020 class at you, though, because I think it might lead to a little bit of good discussion, which the 2020 class had Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson, and Isaiah Wilson. I think you can probably ignore the last 2. Let's pretend that Austin Jackson and Isaiah Wilson didn't get drafted. But those top 4, Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, probably a good discussion in terms of comparability, I think.
I would agree. I wasn't the most sold of that 3 of Wills at the time. But that wasn't to say I didn't like Jedrick Wills either. I mean, I did, but I would have had him just do my own thing at that point before we kind of formalised it. He would have been my 4th tackle. I think I probably over-egged things on Mekhi Becton. We've all had these prospects. We think, do you know what, they're going to be amazing. And when you look back with hindsight, you go, oh, why did I like him so much? Was it just because he was massive and looked amazing running about at that size? Andrew Thomas had a really shaky start, but has come to be everything I think we thought Andrew Thomas would be. Yeah. So he was my favourite prospect that year.
He was mine.
Tristan Wirfs has actually been a fantastic player for the Bucks. I had him probably third. As I say, I was too high on Becton. But there is similarities there between this class. You've got the guy who is the left tackle. You've got these big, huge units like Mekhi Becton. Again, difficult as prospects. It's so difficult to look back at people with hindsight. You think, oh yeah, Becton, yeah, he's not going great at the Jets. Yeah, these guys are going to be so much better. But we actually, when I was really high on Becton, and I'll admit that. So, it's difficult when you've got that knowledge in the back of your head, isn't it, to remember back what you thought about them at the time.
Yeah. But what it does show you, so is what 4 classes there, that we do have good offensive tackle prospects come out most years. Look at the top of each one of those class. They were all prospects that we thought of towards the top of each draft class overall. So it shows you that how valuable they are, because the amount that go in each round, in the first round every year. It shows you how difficult it is. Yeah, it's difficult to also show how difficult it is to transition, because a lot of them didn't pan out. But there's a lot of good. It also shows you that this 2024 class is very good, even at this point, and we've got a way to go. So final verdict, I think, is that this is a very, very good offensive tackle class.
I think the verdict is that it's a good class, but we don't know which one of them will be good.
Perfect. That sums up the podcast perfectly. That's it. That's the coverage for the rest of the year. Every prospect, just we're not sure, could be good. But if you're listening, listening to us talk here and you have an opinion, as we said before, leave it down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. How good is the 2024 offensive tackle class compared to the others? Are we maybe sleeping on a prospect? Is there a prospect in the 2024 class that maybe we haven't mentioned that you're a big fan of? Leave it in the comments. We'll interact with you. Well, Stu, that's the pod. I enjoyed that. It was good to talk a little bit more in depth on, going in deep into some of these discussions that we've been maybe a little bit limited on time previously. What do you think? It was quite good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well, because sometimes we do become fixated on who's the best, who's the next best, and ranking these prospects in numbers. We're actually having a discussion about things. It helps me change my mind or not at times. Sometimes you might have a different prospect or a different take on something, and it's good to have these chats. And often we kind of have these chats offline on text messaging and whatnot. It's good to just formalize it and put out there what we're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll have some time to do a few more of these in the future as we go to doing podcasts more often. When we've got maybe a free week, we'll dive into some more of these topics and go a little bit deeper. Well, Stu, thanks for joining me. Really enjoyed that, and thanks for watching and listening to us. Finally, before you go, one last thing to ask: if you've got this far into the podcast, you've obviously enjoyed listening to us. If you could head to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, do all that malarkey that everyone always asks you to do, it would really appreciate it, and it'd be great to have you on board. And if you're listening on the audio podcast version, you're missing out. Head over to the YouTube channel, join in the discussion, leave us some comments, or if you could follow us wherever you get your podcast, leave us 5-star rating and all that jazz. That would be lovely. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon for some more draft talk.